Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success. Actually, I got a new title. I'm the Senior VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Cap and Gown. Today, we're going to be talking about how to become an Illuminator, and we have one of my favorite guests, Dr. Sherry Woosley. We're going to be having a conversation about people telling you all sorts of things if you have the kind of face that looks trustworthy and like you care, which can be interesting, and some other traits of being an Illuminator on your campus. So that will be really fun. A couple of things to tell you. Our next episode isn't until well into March. So the 17th will be our next episode. And so that means that I get to talk to you about Rhythm of the Academic Year, March. The theme of March is spring break. Or spring fever. Now we're getting close enough to spring break that everyone is thinking about it and planning. I actually spent this weekend planning my spring break. Students are thinking about how excited they are or how disappointed they are about how their spring break is going to be shaping up. We are approaching the midterm season in the semester, so students are feeling a little bit of anxiety about that. They're thinking about what they're going to do this summer, where are they going to work, and then always that idea of registration, which is one of the things, one of the interventions that you should be running pretty soon. Thinking about students getting registered for next semester classes. Think especially about those students who haven't picked a major yet because they may be running out of some of those core classes. Students are feeling anxious about where they're going to live next year. So there's just a lot going on as we march towards the end of the semester. And I think about you guys. I yesterday, for the first time in a meeting, had somebody start to talk about their summer plans. And so I know it's still February, but we are, like I said, marching towards summer. So that's what's going on with the Rhythm of the Academic Year. Also, you guys, it's proposal season. So if you are going to a conference and are going to present, I would love to know about that. Or if you want to do a presentation with me, or probably even Sherry would be happy. She's the queen of presentations. Love to talk to you about that a little bit more. Okay, I think all of that is the housekeeping that I have to do. So let's move on to State of the Union. My colleague Rebecca says she really likes State of the Union because I've gone through and read all the articles and I'm just giving you the summaries. Unfortunately, today I have a lot of articles that I think you should go and read yourself. So I'm going to wet your whistle by telling you about some of them. But some of them are pretty interested with some really involved information that I would encourage you to go and read. So the first one, you guys remember we've been talking about this new earning test that Congress has created. It's called the Do No Harm. And it is measuring the outcome of students with a degree versus students without a degree. So all of these schools have to prove like, hey, and if you get this college degree, you're going to make more money than other schools. Well, Indiana is taking it a step further. And they're saying, actually, if an institution has a college program that doesn't fit the criteria here, that fails the test, basically, they are going to end that program. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of conversation about that, a lot of questioning. A couple of highlights I want to give you. Indiana's reasoning is that this bill supports a stronger guarantee that important higher education investments being made by Hoosier students and their families lead to meaningful career opportunities and financial stability, adding there will be a thorough evaluation of all the programs up for elimination rather than just automatically dismissing them. Nebraska and New Hampshire have done something very similar. One of the things that comes out here, though, is this idea that colleges have to look at programs and their value that maybe don't come fully from the salary that a student is going to make. So here are some of the programs that are kind of in trouble, depending on what the outcome of this year and next year's tests are: a bachelor degree in dance, bachelor in music, associate degree in library and archive assisting, bachelor's degrees in English and literature, bachelor's degrees in computer software and media applications, and an associate's degree in teacher education and professional development. So those are assigned to different colleges that have those degrees that are not reaching the levels that the government wants them to. But it's interesting when you look at those, there's some intrinsic value in those that maybe looking at salary requirements wouldn't pick up. So that will be an interesting story to watch. And if you're interested in all the ins and outs, I would encourage you to read that one. Okay. This one I love, and I picked it because I knew Sherry was going to be on, and she's going to really like this one. The title of this one is called Rethinking First Generation Labels. There's some new research coming out of the Common App where they looked at 784,000 Common App applicants from 2016, 2017. That seems like a long time ago, but they're looking at 6-year graduation rates, which is why they have that as the cohort. They actually are talking about, and the research is finding that this idea of binary first generation label actually masks some really important differences in student outcomes. So first generation students in this study defined as students whose parents did not complete a bachelor's degree. Their 6-year completion rates range from 58% for students whose parents have no college experience to 78% for those whose parents both hold an associate's degree. So that's the first measurement they looked at. What I love about this is they've gone through and really parsed out specifically 4 different kinds of parental groups. And I'm not going to go into all of the details, but they have identified striving, emerging, advancing, and established. And each of those different groups has different, maybe one parent has a college degree, but the other one doesn't. They both have college degrees. One of them has an associate's degree, the other one doesn't. None of them have degrees. They've kind of gone out and really striated that in a way that makes it a little bit more obvious that when we talk about our first generation students, we can't paint them with a broad brush. We actually have to dig into some of the details there. And there are significant differences in graduation rates depending on which of those groups you fall in. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would go and dig into the details on the article. I just like when we use data to better understand in very specific ways what our students need and how we can support and serve them. An opinion piece inside higher ed called How Dual Enrollment in Early College Has Changed. This is really fascinating. This is from Russell Olwell, who wrote a book about 5 years ago about this idea of early college and dual enrollment. And his op-ed is just about how it's consistently growing and changing as we go through. So increases in students taking those dual enrollments, how we talk about it. So now it's not so much about intellectual enrichment, but more about how we get good career guidance and guided pathway programs into different majors and different institutions. There's a lot of collaboration between high school faculty and college faculty, making sure that the curriculum makes sense and that it should count both for college credit as well as the high school piece. So there's lots of interesting things in there. I will tell you, if you've not heard Matt say this before, one of the highest risk categories that we find on campuses consistently is any student who is coming to your campus with 0 transfer credits. So that's no AP classes, no early college, no dual credit. Those are students who, if they have 0 transfer credits, they're getting used to academic rigor, they're getting used to the collegiate lifestyle. And in a lot of cases, we talk to schools about creating a summer program to get those students in so that they can get some of that familiarity before we just throw them into the deep end with a full term fall or spring semester. So lots to say about that, but that's an interesting one to dig into. And then my last 3 are about AI. So, there's a lot, this is a new thing that we're all talking about. I'm sure on your campus, there's lots of conversation around this. We're in a really interesting sort of Wild West space around AI because everybody's trying to figure it out and how to do it the best ways, how to do it ways that are healthy and safe for our students, but also looking at some of the data that we're collecting from usage around AI. So I have 3 articles for you. The first one is AI usage mirrors young people's offline struggles. this is coming out of a report from Surgo Health in partnership with Young Futures and the JED Foundation. I love the JED Foundation. They found about 12% of youth who reported mental health struggles said they've turned to generative AI to talk about their feelings. While short-term emotional relief was common, it did not consistently lead to positive outcomes over time. When AI is used as a broader support system, benefits were greater, but neutral or negative experiences were more likely when it served as a substitute. So this comes out of research from about 1,300 youth from 13 to 24. Hannah Kemp, Chief Solution Officer at Surgo Health, said the research suggests young people are turning to AI in ways that reflect whether their needs are met offline, which I think is so interesting. If they need more guidance, if they don't have somebody who's walking with them, who can help fill in the blanks and where they're confused, then they're turning to AI because they don't have that primary touch point relationship to use. So they too, in this article, go through and separate out students into different groups with names like low use anxious skeptics. Another group, 32%, thriving light touch pragmatists, which are well-supported youth who maintain a healthy arm's length relationship with AI. We have worried strivers, which are about 7% of the population, who are high-pressured, future anxious youth who see AI as destabilizing rather than supportive. And it just goes on and on and on, all the way up to a 10% of this population who are curious, low-concern learners. They are confident, socially grounded youth who use AI to explore and learn and solve problems. So a lot of good data coming out of how AI is supplementing some of the experiences that these students are having in real life, where they feel like they're not getting the support that they need or they're not finding the resources they need. So that one I think would be super interesting to partner with a faculty member, go through that article, and then maybe do like a lunch and learn or a presentation for your campus, just so everyone can better understand that. Related, social media is linked to student loneliness. No surprise there, but new research came out of the University of Cincinnati, which basically says the more you're on social media, the lonelier you're going to feel. Also underlines the point that these college students are really COVID kids. So they lost some of the foundational social pieces in their life as they were going through COVID. Things like how to manage conflict, how to be a good citizen in the community, how to make friends, how to do small talk. Some of those building blocks are missing. And so it's easier for them to connect in a social media way. But obviously, those relationships are not going to be as rich and robust. And so even just having conversations on your campus about the connection between social media use and loneliness, and saying the less you use it, what this data says, the less you use it, the less likely you are to report being lonely. We don't know if that's causation or correlation, but it's an important thing to be talking to our students about. And then the last one I have for you is an article called Why One AI Administrator is Skeptical of AI. I think it's worth a read just because he really digs into this idea that we are kind of everything's up in the air. We need philosophical understanding of how AI can fit into our lives. And right now, what we're finding is a lot of tech companies, first of all, are pitching AI as a silver bullet, as a thing that's going to fix everything that's wrong on your campus, which we know too good to be true. But also it's scary because they are using their AI systems to get trained up on your students, on what they're asking, to get faculty to say, here's what they need to learn in this class, and then training all of their models on that, which then sets them up to be able to replace workers more quickly with some of these AI processes that you basically are teaching them how to do exactly. So he kind of relates this to things like online courses. Remember when those first came out, we're like, college is over and no one's ever going to want to go to college again. Okay, probably not that, right? But we're in that same place where people are making predictions about how that transition is going to work. And this op-ed talks a lot about making sure that we are preserving our intellectual property. So that's the other piece. If you're just uploading, for example, your classmate's paper to AI and saying, hey, give me some responses to this, I'm supposed to critique it, in that case, you've taken someone else's writing, you've put it into AI that now is going to use that to train their model. And obviously that person didn't have permission. So it's just like any new technology, there's just going to be these things that we've got to work through and make sure that we're making smart choices and good choices. And I suspect some of you, in 15 years, we're going to look back and think, wow, that was kind of crazy town where everybody was like AI all the time without having this good foundation of how it makes sense. And how we need to utilize it really to help our students instead of take the places of primary relationships, which we have just heard does not go so great. So, all right, that is the State of the Union, which means I get to welcome my guest, Dr. Sherry Woosley. Hey, Sherry.
What a great State of the Union.
I know there's so many exciting things going on. I don't know. You and I haven't really talked about AI. Maybe we'll have to do another episode on that. But what do you think about this idea that we just kind of are in the Wild West and everybody's making stuff up and some of it's not good?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you see people react, I think, in a number of different ways. Some just step back and go, I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it. I'm not. And you see the people that are, it's going to take everything down. And you see the people that jump right on board. And we all know it's all of the
Somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
All of the above.
I think the thing that scares me most about it is just I'm thinking about a lot of our schools that are in a rush to employ AI, but I'm not sure they can always articulate the problem they're trying to solve, right? There's we've got to get on the bandwagon and you're like, okay, but hold on, what is the pain point? And they're like, we have to AI. And you're like,
we're behind. We're behind. Yeah. That's the pain point. Well, I think there's we're behind. And then I also think we're not doing a great job because it's really, really hard right now to understand hate to use a business term, but downstream effects.
Yes.
We're going to add this change. What does that mean? I just saw one with a high school where they're looking at putting, AI on all the students' laptops, and they found out any student who uses it for AP is going to get a 0.
Oh, no.
So you better train up those students. You better train up those faculty. You better make sure you're not putting those students in a tough spot.
Yeah.
And so you better get in front of that, right?
It's the feeling that you don't know the right questions to ask yet, right? I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, oh yeah, we have a chatbot, which I think is great. I've reassessed. I used to be like, no way. But then I was like, there's some questions that why do we need a person to answer, right? That actually is transactional. And I was like, okay, well, help me understand what happens when a student asks a question, what happens to that data? And how does the student know? And they were like, oh yeah, that gets sent over to our whatever. So now we know they're interested in tutoring, so we can send them targeted messages. And I was like, okay, well, I would be very interested to know how your student thinks about that, because they don't know they're supposed to ask, is this anonymous and where is this data going? It's a new thing, right? So it's very interesting to see how
unexpected
that will
consequences. We're going to face a lot of them.
And Sherry, when I tie that to, I've done so much thinking and studying about social media and how it was the same kind of thing where it just went like wildfire and nobody was stopping to be like, how old do you need to be to utilize this? And what kind of things should you put online that are going to last forever? And we're in the place where people are doing without stopping to think sometimes. And that always has unintended consequences. And sometimes they're bad.
Some of them will be awesome and we don't know. And some of them are going to be bad and we're going to have to clean them up.
Yep, that's exactly right. So. Always exciting, always exciting. Okay, so we are working on this book, How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Seen, which we're all really enjoying. I want to talk today about how to be an illuminator. I've already covered what happens when you're a diminisher, which basically people don't want to be around you when you're like that. That's the summary of what happens when you're a diminisher. But you and I were laughing. You said, and this is true, Rachel, I think you have the face, which you have the face too. So can you explain what that is? And then I'm going to ask some questions about what that means in your life. What is the face?
So, well, why don't I tell you the origin story of the concept? Because I was talking to a colleague and she was talking about how she has sort of resting angry face. There's another term for it, but
Yes.
we'll
Mhm.
resting angry face. And she said, so she'll be sitting there thinking, and people will come over and go, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I started laughing when she described it because she does. I mean, you can just see it. If she's in a neutral position, it looks like she's mad. And
Yeah.
I made a joke about how I have the opposite. I have resting, come and talk to me and tell me your whole life story face.
Sure.
And so she and I had a great laugh about it, but it got me thinking and it got me asking people I know, do you have that? I've had it my whole life. People come up and talk to me and tell me stuff and stuff they probably shouldn't, and stuff when I think I have resting angry face and I don't. So I have the face that says, please come talk to me even when I don't want you to.
Yeah. But Sherry, so one of the things that as you introduced that concept to me, as I was thinking about it,
Yeah.
my question is,
Mhm.
I mean, because in your case, that is a reflection of reality. Like you are an illuminator, you are curious, you do have positive regard for people.
Yes.
Do you think that everybody who has a come tell me your deepest, darkest secrets face, that's like reflective of them really? Or you think there are some people who have that face and they're like, I hate you, go away. Like you're confused about my face.
I don't know, because I think what has been interesting to me as I've talked to groups about, like I'll go in, it's a great social like icebreaker.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
if I'm with a group of people and I'll mention it, and about 1 in 10, 2 in 10 have it, and they'll go, yeah, me too. And
Yeah.
a ton of people go, well, I talk to strangers. I'm like, no, you don't have the face.
Yeah.
You don't have the face. And I know there are definitely times where I don't want people to talk to me. And I've told you jokes. I mean, I wear the big headphones on the plane. I read a book. I'm hiding. And the only time I have not had the face is giant headphones, a hoodie, sweatshirt, and when we had to wear masks.
Oh, yeah.
That is the only time people have not come up and talked to me. And it's all ages. It's been my whole life. The other thing that I don't know what it is. I have 2 kids. One of them has the face. People talk to her. Adults, kids, everybody talks to her. The other kid does not. The other kid is very nice. She's very curious.
Yeah.
She's lovely, but she doesn't have the face. So I don't know.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's what was fascinating to me about like reading this book is he's got very specific things.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, I will say the other thing is I crack jokes about like when people get concerned about getting older. And I'm like, as long as I have smile wrinkles, I'm good. Like
Yeah.
I want
Oh,
smile wrinkles. So I do think there's something about who you are reflected in
Mm-hmm.
what you look like in and some of it's heredity, but some of it is who you are. But I don't know how much of the face is
Real.
I just know
A
I have.
real reflection. We have to, if anybody listening has the face and is like, but also I couldn't care less, please don't talk to me about things we would be interested to hear. Okay, so have you ever had the experience of meeting a stranger and they have the face and you're like, I don't know why I just told you all of that, but I totally did.
I don't think as much. I mean, I'm sure I did that when I was young, but for me, I think as a person with the face who strangers talk to, who is female in our society, I'm very conscious of safety. So
Yeah,
I'm
for
very
sure.
careful about who I tell what. And I probably tell stories that people are like, oh my gosh, but I know exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
Like I tell funny, goofy stories because they're fun and they make people
Yeah.
laugh.
Yeah, that's enjoyment. Yeah. I think it helps. So I've had that experience maybe a couple of times in my life, but the times that I've had that experience, what was helpful to me was it was like a smaller population. So it's not like airport. It's not like all the people in the airport. It's like people at a conference and I'm sitting next to somebody that I've never met before and there's like an icebreaker kind of question that's very shallow and then the next thing I know I'm like telling this whole story and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why am I telling you this?"
They had the face.
Yeah, they did. And also, this is why I think it might be reflective of an attitude too, because also they're not horrified by me being like, well, let me tell you this story that maybe I wouldn't tell everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. So we have the face, we have this experience where people just kind of tell us
Yeah.
what's going on in their life. And I want to relate it to something that I've been thinking about and talking about. I have a new conference workshop that I've been doing, which is Danger Brain to Connection Brain. I think you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this idea of there are some people whose faces just reflect they're a connector. They just are like, okay, well, I will listen and then I'll get you connected to someone else, especially if we have this smaller population of something like a campus or where we work or something like that. So I want to read this quote out of the book for you, and then and then I want to talk about it. Although, okay, sorry, I feel like my pages were out of whack. Okay, a person who is looking for beauty is likely to find wonders, while a person looking for threats will find danger. A person who beams warmth brings out the flowing side of people they meet, while a person who conveys formality can meet the same people and find them stiff and detached. The quality of your life depends quite a bit on the quality of your attention. Which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how I am sort of in my real life, which is I've still got a little bit in New York, which is like, I still send off the vibes. But, Sherry, when I'm working, I am always looking to connect and be delighted by people. And one of the interesting stories in this book was the author, David Brooks, was saying that he was interviewing someone in a very respectful way. He was like, please tell me about your experience. And she seemed like she was an older woman, very stern. And then her pastor came into the restaurant with like just delight on his face and like wonderment about her and warm towards her. And she changed into a completely different person, right? She returned that warmth and exuberance and affection and all of those elements. And he was saying, isn't that amazing that when I treat her like we're formal, like we have to stay at arm's length, this is who she is. But then when this person who's very close to her comes in, she actually is transformed into a totally different person who I would not have known because I wasn't giving that kind of affectionate warmth off. So interesting to think about how our attention to people actually changes them. Although if you're in higher education, you will not be surprised about that piece, right? Anything you want to say about that before we move on?
No, I love that story too. I heard him say it in a speech and it's so good.
So good. Okay. So related, when we're talking about moving people from danger brain to connection brain, I always talk about culture code. We have these 3 belonging cues, which is you have to show energy, you have to be individual, and you have to talk about this future focus. And that's how we make our students feel really safe. He talks about this idea of the illuminator's gaze is warm, respectful, and admiring, conveying their presence before any words are spoken. So I think this takes us to this non-verbal aspect of communication that I want to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to say is you and I were saying, I was telling you earlier that I was talking about this idea of being delighted by your kids.
Yeah.
How you don't have to say anything. If they walk in the room and you are delighted just by their presence, it is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
They don't forget it. And it changes their interaction with you versus you're annoyed every time you see them.
Or on your phone. I
think about that all the time, right? The greetings, like when my daughter comes home, I am happy to see her. I'm up and whatever I'm doing, like I want to be with her versus, right? Like, yeah, you're home, get a snack and go to your room. Totally different experiences, right? For that child.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you have some to say about nonverbal communication. Tell me about how you got to that and what your questions are.
Well, let me tell you about why it's on my brain this year in particular. My daughter's been working on college essays because she had to do all the applications and everything else. And she wrote this fabulous essay. And of course, I'm biased. She's mine. But what I love about it is it talks about her experience. She had apraxia of speech. And I don't know if you know what this is. It's fascinating, also horrible. But it's for children who have it, it's literally their mouth is not synced up with their brain. So she has thoughts going and she tries to say it and the different sounds come out. It makes no sense. And so it took her about 7 years of speech therapy to get to the point where she's, very articulate now, but, still every now and then has to flip a word or do something because the mouth isn't quite there.
Yeah.
But she wrote this fabulous essay about what it taught her about communication, and particularly nonverbals was a big part of it. And she's got a great little sentence that I love. You'll appreciate this, I think. She says that she learned about nonverbal speech from watching people. And her sister taught her that an eye roll never helps anything. That her dad taught her that a smile and a wink can help almost any conversation. And her mom taught her about mirroring.
Oh, that's awesome.
Whether that's like smiling, leaning in, reflecting the energy, whatever it is. And then she goes on to write about how mirroring serves her even now. And it serves her as she does interviews for journalism. When she mirrors people, when she watches their excitement level about different topics, all of those things teach her about what that person is communicating in ways that maybe the voice or the words content do not. And part of me is like, my gosh, if I had learned that at 18.
Oh,
but
gosh.
part of it is like, what a great essay. No wonder she got into college.
Also, I'm very proud. Well, I like that because I think, sorry, I just took a whole journey about how we miss those cues because we are so, first of all, self-occupied.
Yes. What am I going to say next?
What do I have to say? And then also we miss them because they're so subtle that I wish I could remember this quote from the book. It was something about like, something is very polite. I'll have to look it up, but it's this idea that it's not bursting down your doors and being like, look, I'm sad or I'm happy or whatever. But actually it's very polite. It knocks in. If you don't open the door, then it goes away. And then you've missed it. And then you don't have that. And so this training, and one of the things that he talks about is this is a practiced posture. This isn't necessarily something you're born with, but you actually can learn to do this really well. And that is to pay attention to all these variations on a person's face. And they can change the meaning of a student's words if you are paying attention to what's happening on their face, right?
Well, and Glennis even wrote about, she not only sort of observed them, she had to learn them because she didn't have words. So you have to learn how to communicate non-verbally if you don't have the words. So she learned, puppy dog eye is my forever, torture, right?
Yeah.
But you have to learn how to get at somebody's level, to get in their face when you need them, to like all the non-verbal stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
So.
It's funny that you talk about wearing a mask because I remember, I think, let's see, Lillian was maybe 6 or 7 during COVID. So she's older. Like she's not, I don't have a little person anymore. But I remember when she and I would go out and I would have a mask on and I would feel like I can't communicate. She's across the room and I need for her to stop doing what she's doing or come here or say like, it's okay. Don't be anxious. I'm here. I'm watching, whatever. And I couldn't do any of it. I had to be like, hey, right? The hand.
You have to either use your whole body or something. It's a whole different set of communication.
For sure.
But it's also interesting too, like Glennis wrote about interviewing 2 people and how one of them kept getting more and more excited talking about the other one. So she started asking questions about that and got a really good story out of that. And she said, if I hadn't been paying attention, I'd have missed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And that I think is the thread throughout this conversation, which is when you get too busy and you have too many things going on, or you're tired, right? Or you're preoccupied or whatever, you do miss these really subtle clues that people are giving you that are opportunities not only to understand them better, but also provide care for them,
They can open the door to something that you're not spotting.
Yeah. I was in a meeting the other day, a very informal meeting, and one of my coworkers was there and I was watching her and I finally was like, Shauna, do you need me to go get you some water? And she's like, yes, my water bottle is empty and I'm like trying to find, and I was like, just stop. I'm going to go see if I can find you some water.
Yeah.
That is an opportunity for me to care for her and also say I'm paying attention. And if I had been preoccupied, I totally would have missed it. And she just would have been thirsty the whole meeting and would have been terrible.
And imagine how the rest of the conversation went because of that versus how it could have gone because of that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So Maya Angelou, has this great quote. I've learned that people will forget what you've said and they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that's really the essence of what we're talking about here. So in this vein of practice postures, one of the researchers in the book argues that this is really interesting to me. The essential immoral act is the inability to see other people correctly. I'm going to say that one more time. The essential immoral act is the inability to see other people correctly. We stereotype, we project, and we diminish. The good person casts just and loving attention, which I really think is so valuable.
Yeah.
Because when we articulate, I'm always talking about how did you articulate what the job is? Is the job to solve absences or is the job to be present with your students? And so when you articulate what we're trying to do with our students and with each other is to give just and loving attention to each other without all of this other junk getting in the way. And then watch what unfolds from that.
Yeah.
And how it changes people, I think is really remarkable.
When I read that quote, it made me nervous, though. That's such a high standard.
Well,
but it's lovely, right? Like it's lovely. It is. You want to aim high.
And it's really interesting to me because not to get too deep into religious readings, but you will remember that in the Bible, Jesus is doing something and somebody says it's bad. What you're doing is bad. And he says, hey, that's the unforgivable sin. If you look at something that's good and you call it bad, I don't know how to help you, right? Which is similar to this. Like if you look at a person and you don't read them, you just label them or take shortcuts or assign, like, what do? You've missed out on something really important there. So Brooks goes on to talk about some of the ways that we can become illuminators. And I want to go through these one by one because I love I love all of them but one. I'll tell you which one I don't love at the end.
But. Okay, I'm so curious now. That's quite the hook, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, the first one is tenderness. Okay. Which I love in the book. He talks about basically Mr. Rogers, right? Like, can you just think of Mr. Rogers and how he approached all of his conversations, not just with kids, but with anybody who was on his show, just so tender towards them. And Brooks says, this is a deep emotional concern about another being, which is so important. And I think comes oftentimes out of slowing down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Because if you're harried and you've got too much going on, you really can't convey tenderness to another person.
No.
You just convey, I'm busy and you're in my way.
Like,
I don't know what's going on with you.
It, right? And we've all had those mom moments or dad moments where you are move it, or teacher moment. But yeah, tenderness is lovely.
Yeah. Okay. The next one is receptivity, which this I think is so important. This is overcoming insecurities and self-preoccupation and opening yourself up to the experience of others. And I was actually thinking about you at this, Sherry, because one of the things that I've learned from you is when you pursue something that you're not good at, there's a lot of benefits that come from that. But one thing is that you just show up really empty-handed. Yes. Like, yes. I'm here. I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Which then gets you ready to experience another person fully because you're leaning into being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Which just makes you more receptive to any of those things. Anything else you want to say about that one?
I'm wondering the way that you just described it, if it's like the opposite of ego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just showing up and being like, what do we, and also we talked about this last week, but all of us have this like manager mode. I forgot, Z, what did Shauna say that their family called it? It's like administrator Shauna, but everybody has this place where we're just like, we're just full steam ahead and whatever. And when you are doing that, you are not receptive to what is happening with other people, and you can just steamroll them instead of receiving whatever it is they have for that one. Okay, we've talked the third one is active curiosity. We've talked a lot about that, just about how you question not to trick a person or not to win or not to disagree with them, but really because you're just curious about their experience. And I really like this in the book. He says, active curiosity is having an explorer's heart.
Ooh, love it.
I like just being present with people and trying to figure out what they're made of, right? That's a good one. Anything about active curiosity you want to say?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Affection. This is one of my favorites.
Okay.
So in the book, they talk about affection. It's like there's this way of knowing things that we have in modern society, really removed from a heart connection. You know things because you did research about them, or because you read them, or because you know the facts. And Brooks is really trying to categorize affection as not only this objective eye of a scientist knowing a thing, but also this grace-filled eye of love, which is an affectionate way of knowing, right? What your daughter said about a smile and a wink will help most conversations. That's what this one is about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We say in my family, I'll say sometimes to my daughter when I'm fussing at her and she starts to have a response, and I'll be like, hey, look at my face. That is joyful, and I'm not feeling a way towards you. I'm just saying you got to pick up your shoes,
Yeah.
But you can learn that a lot.
We say it in our family. We say we're on the same team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Sherry, that is a great example of how saying something, like I was thinking this morning, I was fussing at my daughter for leaving a bag of chips open. And I said to her, hey, I don't want to complain, but I'm just wondering, this bag of Doritos that is sitting on my dresser, do you know anything about that? To which she laughed, and then she went and got it and threw it away, and then she gave me the explanation. Well, you could read those same words and not see my face and not feel my energy. And she's really like, man, she's harping on this poor kid. Yeah. Versus what my experience was with my daughter, which is we are on the same team. Look at my face. I think it's kind of funny that this thing is here. I mean, you need to take care of it, but we can still have this affectionate conversation around it, right? I think that one's great. Okay. And then the last one that he gives us is generosity.
Okay.
And generosity, I think of it this way. When I was in grad school, my brother and I would always talk about giving something a charitable reading. Yes. Which is, let's not assume that the author of this article is stupid. Let's give it a charitable reading. Like maybe he actually does know what he's talking about, and let's see what comes out of that. Well, the same is true for people. Yes. Somebody doing something, instead of snapping to, well, they're bad or they're deceptive or they're trying to, let's just give them a charitable reading. What could it be? It could be they're having a hard day.
Yep.
It could be they feel lonely or insecure, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a phrase for it, but I can't remember what it is. It's something about assuming something, but yeah.
Good. It's like assuming good intentions.
Yeah. Kind of like that.
Yeah. And I think it's a really fun game. I mean, we do this in our family, is like, what are all of the things it could be? Yes. It could be they were hungry and it has nothing to do with you, right? Yeah. It could be that they've been trying to solve this problem for 4 months and they just are at their wits' end. Let's think of all of the things that it could be and show up with those expectations instead of this idea of, I know you hate me, or you're whatever that is. Okay. So as we look at these, do you have a favorite of these?
I don't know if I do. I mean, they all seem so intuitive, don't they?
They do. And I think it's part of the hardship. I think there are people where they hear it and they're like, of course. And then there are other people who are like, I don't do any of that.
But I mean, when I say intuitive though, I don't necessarily mean they're easy. I
For
just mean
sure.
it's given. Like, but those are the kinds of things I remind myself, right?
Yeah.
Remind yourself, like when you're annoyed at somebody, remind yourself they're a good person.
Yeah.
Remind yourself to show up.
Be kind. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, the only one that I struggle with a little bit, and this is very much just about who I am, is this idea of active curiosity. I like curiosity. I like being
Yeah.
curious about people. I just think you have to be very, very careful to not
Yeah.
insist on more than they're willing to give.
Yeah.
And people who you're having a conversation and they really are present with you and they're asking to help you understand and to help them understand. And then people that you have conversations with and they're very interested in the details, and it doesn't feel like it's for your sake. It feels like it's for the sake of a salacious story,
Yeah.
or being
Yeah.
able
They
to
want
like,
the tea so they can spill the
that's
tea.
right. That's exactly right. They're like, okay, I got it all. So that's
Well,
the only one I think you've got to be very careful about.
Well, and I also think that as somebody who has the face, I have the luxury of not asking and people tell me.
Yeah, true.
So
True.
if I'm going to err on any side, I'm going to err on sitting quietly and giving them the space to say what they want to say.
Yeah, for sure. And Sherry, I just think I was thinking about nurses.
Mhm.
Nurses are remarkable to me because they don't. This is a vast that all not all of them.
Okay.
But when you are in the hospital and you have nurses, oftentimes they don't have boundaries with you, right? Because part of their job is to like come in and make sure you're okay. And like,
Yeah.
why is the machine going off and all
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff. But it's such an interesting way of being where they're like, I do have a right to be here and to be in the stuff with you.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, they do it really well. They don't do it in a way that feels overwhelming. It just feels like they know what they're doing. And so they're going to ask you questions and try to get to the bottom of what's going on, right? But I'm always amazed with their confidence in wading into a mess. Like what could be a messy situation, So that's the only one that I'm like, you gotta be careful. Sometimes you can be too curious. And I don't know if you have this, but this comes from me out of being a counselor. You just never know what's going on with people. You literally have no idea. Like I've done counseling with couples and I'm like, I know nobody in this whole community would believe what they just told me or what they're going through or what's happening. You just have no idea. Yeah. And so walking that line of, I will wade into whatever the thing is with you, but also I'm not curious for curiosity's sake. I'm curious so that we can do good work together, I think is really important. All right. Let's see. I want to get on to assessment as data and listening.
Yeah.
There's a great quote in this book that says, every epistemology becomes an ethic. The shape of our knowledge becomes the shape of our living, which I feel like we could talk about for a very long time.
Ooh, that is deep, isn't it?
Very interesting. He goes on to say, how we know students determines how we treat them, which I think is very true. And the students where you do know them. And so your solution to a problem might be very different from your colleague who doesn't know the student and who's like, this is what we should do. And you're like, hold on a second. Here's all the things you need to know before you can actually make a good determination of that. You have to have some way of understanding their story and themselves. So can you talk to me about assessment and data and this idea of how that reflects our listening?
Yeah. Well, I think it's been kind of a through point of my work in assessment. I've always thought of assessment as a method of listening to students. So like we can get enamored in the numbers and the stats, but it's about students and what they're telling us. And I think I told you this earlier is that like now that I'm not in the classroom, I'm not even on a campus anymore. I work with tons of institutions, but to me, it's extraordinarily important to remind myself that this is a way of listening at scale across them. but also then to dig in, because it can be really easy to sit and talk about, the percentage of students or the big concept, sense of belonging and community and all this
Yeah,
stuff. But you go read some of those open-ended comments and you're reminded that it's the man that's so nice that fixes their sandwich that makes a difference for that student,
that's
or
right.
the custodial staff member who talks to them while they're cleaning the lounge. Like,
Mhm.
it's sometimes so many of these little things. And so for me, assessment is that thing of letting me listen to student voices in a very close way. Can I also tell you, just have to do
Yeah.
this, all right? A woman I know, Ina Efris, has started a new podcast where she's having students on
Oh,
talking, and I've been listening. I know about it because she interviewed my kid, like, for the first show, but it was so cool. She's talking to either high school students or college students about their experiences and the things that they're doing, and that's another way for me to listen,
yeah,
actually
that's good.
hear them, because I don't as
How
much
else
anymore.
would you, yeah. Do you know the name of it?
Quadcast. So,
Quadcast. Okay.
yeah, Quadcast. It's really lovely. She's a former speechwriter for celebrities and stuff. So she's really good at kind of getting some of the stories.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about data. We're always talking about data as how is it actionable? So
Yes.
sometimes you can have somebody in the IR office that just wants to tell you what is, which
Yeah.
is helpful, right? But then
Yeah.
also we want to take the next step, which is like, okay, so what? Then now how does this spur us to do something different or change what we're doing, which I think is so important.
Yeah.
And I also really like the idea, oftentimes when we visit campus and we're talking about retention,
Mhm.
and usually it's Matt who says, increasing retention 1% on your campus is 4 students.
Yes.
Can you think of 4 students,
Mhm.
right? And then that's totally different,
Yeah.
because of course we can. I mean, I can think of 4 students who are struggling and just need a little extra for the rest of the semester, right?
Yeah.
But that translating those numbers down into a real person changes the way you feel about the data,
Yes.
from like, here's what is, to these are real people that we can understand their experience better.
Oh,
I really love.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love the sort of patterns that you see in the messages that you see in the data. But yeah, you got to get it outside of the numbers.
Yeah, for sure. And then you were just telling me before we had to get on about photo voice, which I haven't heard about before. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, I'm laughing because I got asked to do, and so a colleague of mine, Dr. Hillary Lichterman, and I are working on an article, and we're doing it for the Housing and Res Life magazine, Talking Sticks. So
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if it'll be March or May or June or whatever, but it's a magazine article, so that'll make it easy to read. But it's about photo voice as a method for assessment and listening to student voices. But I was laughing because when we were asked to do it, I first heard about this like 30 years ago. And since then, I don't know, there's a professor, Amanda Latz, who's written a book about it.
Hmm.
But the idea, which is super cool, is you send, for many of these studies, students out to take pictures that represent their experiences, and then they come back and they tell you the story of the picture, why they pick it, what they're trying to communicate. So you want to talk about listening to student voices.
Yeah.
You're giving them the agency to take the picture they want and then to describe what it means. And there's some really good examples recently that this is what happens when you get asked to write an article, you find stuff. So
Yeah.
like what I've seen is stuff like, or heard about, Dr. Morgan Murray Lewis at Georgia State did a dissertation study about Black RAs and their experiences at historically white institutions.
Hmm.
Students took pictures that were metaphors or comparisons, and then told stories about them.
I love that.
Texas A&M did a study, or did a report about, they used it to assess a service learning project. And so students took pictures of that service learning and then talked about kind of what that experience was and what they got out of it. There's a really good one, I think I mentioned to you, a group that's doing some work. They're now doing education, but it's also a study called Fat on Campus. and they had folks basically take pictures that represent their experiences with being fat on campus and experiences with fat phobia. So you see chairs and you see this and you see belonging and where they feel really powerful and where they don't. Super cool. And it's that combination to me of photos and stories that I don't know how you get that kind of impact without it.
Well, I was just thinking, what I mean, how many times in your life has somebody unconnected to anything else just said, can you help me understand how you've experienced this or how you felt about this thing? We just don't do that with each other very often. You know what I mean? Like it has to be kind of a special time and place to do that. And so how nice and refreshing it is for somebody to say, help me understand your experience. That's what we're here for.
And how do you see it and how do you describe it? The first time I saw it was a campus that used it just for students' experiences on campus. And that was, okay, this will date me a little, disposable cameras, taking pictures, but they brought them back. And what was so lovely is they took those pictures and they themed them out. And then they did a presentation for the institution's board. This is how students experience facilities. This is how they experience belonging. And I thought it was the pictures. Do you remember those photo viewer things we did as a kid? They made big ones of those with the pictures in them.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, that's a great idea. That would be a great project to embed in U100. Yeah. Right? To have your freshmen in the first semester just be like, go and help me understand about your transition.
Yep. The method comes out of largely out of public health. And one of the things that's also lovely about it is as students work with the facilitator and talk about it, they naturally start talking about how to fix issues. And so you get not only the image and the story, you get we could describe it this way and tell new students about it. We could, whatever it is. So there's an advocacy component that can happen if you let it.
Yeah. I mean, I like actually pitching that to students by saying how you doing this helps advocate for students who aren't here yet. Yeah. What do we need to fix so that we can do a better job of welcoming them or understanding or whatever. So I love
explaining things to them so they get it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool stuff.
Very good. I'm going to have to go do some research on that. I'm curious to see just some concrete examples of how they're making sense of that. So that's great.
You could probably even just search #FatOnCampus and you'll find their website that has all the stuff. They're doing curriculum around it as well. So education and professional development stuff, but that would also show you some of the results. So.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. Okay, well, we're almost out of time. So I want to do our action items.
Yeah.
First, I'm going to tell you a story that's directly related to action items. I was thinking about when I worked at a bakery, and I had this older woman, and she would come in literally every single day. And we had our day old stuff. So we have stuff in the case, but then after a day or two, we wrap it, we just put it in bags, and then it's like half price. So we have a table that's covered in bags full of half price stuff. And she would come in every single day and she would be like, Rachel, what's this? And I'd be like, blueberry muffins. And she'd be like, okay, what's this? And I'd be like, that's strudel. And she'd be like, every single bag, Sherry, every single bag, every single day. And I'm like, I have stuff to do, ma'am. It's the exact same Black Forest cake that it was yesterday. You know what I mean? So then when I started coming, I would stand at the table and then I'd be like, blueberry muffins, harvest muffins, strudel, Black Forest cake, blah, blah, blah. And she would be like, you went too fat. Can you go back to the beginning? And I was like, this woman. So after 2 weeks, I was like, she's going to beat me. She is going to beat me every single day. Every single time she's going to ruin my day and I'm going to be annoyed and I can't have it. So I am going to give her just and loving attention. Yeah. And so the next day when she came, I went out and I held the door for her. And I was like, Mrs. Jones, come see what we have on our half price table. And she was like, okay. And I got a chair and I put it down and I was like, these are our blueberry muffins. You bought these last week. Like we had, and then she got to be my favorite person because I found out about like, she lives by herself and she doesn't, and she takes the extras to her neighbor, like whatever, just the wholeness of her.
Yes.
Because I was like, I am just going to suspend all of the stuff.
Yep.
And just be present with this woman right now. And I loved her. She ended up being my favorite, right? So one action item is pick a difficult person.
I love that.
And give them just and loving attention. And it's just, I would be so curious to hear the outcome of that, right? Because when you change you change other people. When you change your perspective, you change other people. So that's our first action item. Second, Sherry, I was thinking about just the exercise for our listeners of looking at what stories data tell on your campus.
Yeah.
So we do this for a lot of our clients, but even just how do you get down to the narrative comments where your students are actually saying, this is what I love, and this was my experience in Starbucks, and this is why, right? All of that stuff is just so powerful to hear from your students. So I really love that one. And then our last one is, I think it would be so interesting in your processes just to identify where you diminish students, likely not on purpose.
Yeah.
But just because we're trying to get the business done, and any time where you have made a student feel like they are a transaction, instead of, as this book talks about, like there's something to us beyond our bodies and our physical, there's something sacred about people.
Yeah.
And anytime you treat a student like they're a transaction instead of this amazing thing that has quantities and qualities that you can't understand, that's a place you've got to fix something, right?
Yeah.
So
can I expand that just a second?
Please. Yeah.
How about employees?
Yeah, for sure.
When have we diminished our folks? I know that you in general don't do that. I in general don't do that, but I think there are times where we accidentally do that.
Yeah. And to the point of this whole conversation, it's always when I'm stressed, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I am not grounded in the way that I need to be. I'm coming into a meeting with my list of things, which is transactional, without being like, hey, how's everyone doing? Right? How was the weekend? What's going on? So yeah, I think it's just so important to figure out how we fully show up for people who are amazing, Sherry. That's what's so interesting. Like
we're surrounded by amazing folks.
Amazing. And they have experiences and ideas and reflections that you cannot guess.
No.
You have to spend time in this sort of open, safe space with them to really understand what's going on inside of them. So
I think even in the midst of that transactional meeting, you can still show up with excitement that I get to talk to you.
Yeah.
We're going to hammer through this list, but isn't it fun? We get to be here.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. All right, friends, that's another great one. Thank you for joining me. And I don't know, we'll just have to put you back on the calendar. Sherry, eventually you and I will run out of things to talk about.
I don't think so. Because you and I keep reading and learning. If we quit reading and learning, maybe, but
yeah,
otherwise.
Maybe so. But yeah, every time I'm just like, and that could be another episode, which would be so fun. So thank you for joining me. It's always a joy. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Bye.